All right, it's bright and early on a Sunday morning, and this is episode 30 of my live stream. This is the live stream where I work on book two of two stories. Book one, which you can get on Amazon. This is my graphic novel, graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. It's a memoir about faith and mental illness, and it's basically takes place starting with a attempted suicide, and then continuing to kind of get into why exactly that happened. And it's 120-ish pages, all hand lettered and hand inked. And it's an interesting time to be live streaming because, like my son just woke up. Everybody's going to be getting up and doing their morning stuff. But I need to work on my comics. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm working on book two of two stories. And let's see. What else? Um, all right, let's see. So, working on book two of two stories. This right here is actually the last page 103 of book two that I worked out and thumbnailed, and now I'm going to be working on book. Sorry, now I'm going to be working on page 103 as we kind of talk, and I'll probably talk about different topics. If you guys want to stop and hang out in the chats, feel free, and we'll see how this goes. So, all right, totally rambling, but trying to figure stuff out. And like I said, you're going to hear a lot of people waking up early in the mornings sounds. All right, so here we go. Let's get into it. Oh my! Just so you're aware, it's live streaming, so it's not a big deal. I just wanted you to know. I just started. Exactly. So the dogs are all waking up. Everybody's getting their coffee. 4 dogs. My goodness. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into this. This one I'm actually pretty excited about doing, this page. Oh, I should explain what I'm doing. So these are thumbnails and roughs kind of mixed together, fused together into one. And what I usually will do when I'm doing these is break them into 3 sections so that I have the previous version available to kind of check out and work on and look at and all that fun stuff. Let's see here. His iPad's in my room because it wasn't charging here. All right. So this will be a fun, interesting kind of way to stream. But I have a lot of catching up to do because I've missed a couple days of working on my comics. So my hope is today to kind of catch up and hopefully do thumbnails and roughs for like a couple pages, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I want to see that last panel. Where's that last panel from what I was working on? Okay, that's where we left off. All right. So here is going to be the page. One of my favorite hobbies was listening. Okay. So this might actually be like a long line. And just going to kind of work and see where it goes. All right, so we're going to map out this sequence where it says one of my favorite hobbies, and then we'll kind of move from there. I also should mention I'm actually pretty excited. On Tuesday, I'm going to be on Comic Book Club, which is a pretty cool thing. Ah, sweet. We're joined in the chats by Crimson Owl Comics. Late start. Yeah, exactly. Ronnie is working on some pretty cool horror comics and tends to stop by the stream like right before work. How you doing, Ronnie? Yeah, it's been it's funny. Yesterday I had a bunch of yard work and stuff to do, and then the day before that I was just pretty exhausted. So today is my catch-up day where I have to kind of make up for the last few days with work, and also I have some freelance work I have to do as well. So it's going to be an interesting day. Might have a few streams throughout the day, just kind of catching up, which is part of this whole thing. It's just you got to catch up when you don't spend the time.
Are you talking to anyone? Is anyone else on there with you?
No, Ronnie just joined. Why? What's up?
Oh, I just got the impression that you were talking with someone too. So.
No. Just streaming, just live streaming. Anyone who wants can stop by. All right, so it's gonna say one of my favorite hobbies. I'm actually excited because I might be able to draw some of these dudes, but I'm probably gonna have to look up their names. One of my favorite hobbies. Oh, nice. Already on your lunch break. I'm usually catching Ronnie like right before he heads to work, and it turns out I'm hanging with Ronnie during his lunch break. How's your comic coming along, Ronnie? All right. So one of my favorite hobbies was listening to debates. Still is. Maybe not the same debates, but it still remains one of my favorite hobbies is listening. It's not really a hobby, but it's a pastime with the nice. Glad it's coming along well. That's cool. Yeah, like I'm pretty happy with how my comics coming so far, but like I said, I have a few pages to catch up on. Here we go. We're gonna make this and I don't know if you guys can hear it, but my wife is humming the theme to Wallace and Gromit in the background. Let's see here. One of my favorite hobbies was listening to debates with the new atheists. So anyhow, I'm going to be on a show called The Comic Book Club, which you can actually check out on YouTube just looking up Comic Book Club on Tuesday. And I'm pretty sure it'll be a pretty short little segment, but it should be pretty good. And it's cool that they're going to have me on to talk about 2 stories. So I'm not sure if it's going to be like a really long interview. I'm pretty sure it'll probably be a short little segment, but I'm happy about that because any chance I get to talk about the first book, I'm usually pretty happy. The Apocalypse. I think this is going to be about 3 lines tall now. In which let's see some stuff that's on my mind. Well, first I should probably take care of this panel. But a couple things that have kind of crossed my mind is fixed elections. Let's see, golden statues and runes. I'm gonna write that down so I don't forget to get into those. Fixed elections, runes, and what would that be? Fixed elections, runes, and golden statues. Took the weekend off from artwork, so a couple of the days off just had spasms in my drawing hand having dystonic tremors. That sounds brutal. Yeah, I think it's important to take some time off when you need it. I mean, I'm a big fan of like driving through and getting as much art done as possible, but there's times where like yesterday, I was planning on working on this thing last night, and I was just like, nope. Morning. I was just like, no, there's no way I'm going to get anything done. And so now I have to play catch up. But I still think it's important. They'd crush. I am excited though because this is the part of the comic that's kind of getting to the crux of the whole story, and is basically telling like sort of how I became a Christian, but in a non like preachy kind of way. And I'm pretty excited because this is sort of one of the big plot points, and it's kind of neat to finally get to this point within that comic. Did I just draw this on the wrong? Yes, I need to actually separate this. For sure, after we're going back to the drawing board. Awesome. Well, I might be streaming around then, so feel free to hop in there too. I'm planning on doing a stream for each page that I need to block out, and I have 3 that I need to get done today. So this is the first one. And this should say Z, not Christian. I'm also still pretty super sleepy because it's like 6 in the morning. Well, 7 in the morning now. But it's one of those things of like I have a lot of work to do. At least I can get a good start on it. Okay, now I get to look up pictures of the new atheists, which should be pretty fun. Let's see here. 1 p.m. Eastern time is when you're off. Yep, I'll probably be streaming around then. Who knows? Because I'm imagining I'll do this first page and then possibly have some breakfast or something. Hopefully this will take an hour-ish. What's up? Okay, what's on?
It's at 3:30, but it takes like an hour to get there. So.
Okay. Yeah. My wife was letting me know she has to take my mother-in-law for her second vaccination, which is pretty cool. It's cool that there is one. Let's see here. Okay, so let's see here. I think this will do. This is pretty much who the new atheists were. I was a big fan back in the day when I was an atheist. To this day, I still think, even as a believer, I still think Christopher Hitchens was kind of like a brilliant mind. All right, let's see here. So I'm going to have these out so that I can have, I want to have like floating heads like Marvel style here. And that should match with the page to the left of this. Okay. And that gives me a good bearing of like where I'm going to have those heads float. Okay, cool. All right. So let's move these here. So now we're going to basically just block out these as like floating Marvel heads. But yeah, it's a weird time for me to stream because I'm not a morning person in the slightest. And so I'm a morning person if I've like stayed up all night, and then that's my morning. But I'm not quite a morning person when I'm just like waking up early. But this will be a good practice in kind of working whenever. All right, take it easy, Ronnie. Ronnie's heading back to work. Have a good one, man. I hope the rest of your work day goes well, buddy. All right, so here we go. And this is going to be all the different heads. I also want to have these hovering. Oh. There's a couple little things here that keep moving. Okay. All right. Gonna kind of have some rough structures. All right, so let's do this. Just gonna draw some of these heads.
Oh, there you are. Oh, you're waiting for your mom already. Okay.
And let's see here. I know Dawkins has like this tiny little nose. Okay, here we go. But these were like my dudes when I was a heavy atheist. Some of them I still listen to, like because I still think it's important. I think as a believer or like a person who likes to think to kind of check out people you disagree with. Okay. So we're gonna get this hair, this crazy hair. Do 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 do. And this will be the first section of this page. He's got a really unique mouth that if you don't nail is gonna kind of strike in a weird way. And it should be a little lower. Okay. But Hitchens was amazing, just as a thinker, and I think also just like wildly entertaining as a speaker. I actually miss that guy. He passed away a few years ago, but he's a really intelligent man. Some conclusions I wouldn't agree with, but at the time that I'm writing this about, I was heavily on board with. All right, so here we go. All right, so let's get this with the hair here. All right. And all right, so here's something fascinating. They announced they showed some images from CPAC, which is like a big conservative gathering recently. And CPAC is like basically like a big conservative event where they're kind of going to announce like potentially they usually like will announce who the next presidential candidate is and all sorts of fun stuff on there. And they have released a photo of like a golden statue of Donald Trump that they have at the convention, which is hilarious to me. So that's interesting because that to me, like as a person who is a Christian, I find that really weird that a lot of people who would call themselves that like are comfortable with like a giant golden statue of a president. Just to put that into context, like there's a lot of stories with statues of leaders. There's a golden calf that's like a big deal in the Old Testament and the Torah that that kind of creates problems for like Moses and sort of just seems like a weird choice to have like a giant golden statue. There's also a couple stories of like a king trying to make these characters like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego like bow to a statue. And I think that was gold too, where it's like it's just interesting seeing these people who are calling themselves Christians comfortable with a giant golden statue of a leader that they want. Just the choice of gold was really fascinating to me. Seemed very like apropos of like just like how unaware of like the book that a lot of these people claim to believe. I think a lot of the people who are claiming to believe it are pretty unaware. So that was interesting. That was funny to me. A statue of that president. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about runes. So there's also this thing that they used to have. Kingdom Comics said, "Make no mistake, most of the so-called Christians now are in no way conservative and no way stand for what any of the values they constantly talk about our founders did." Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that quite a bit. So that was funny to me. Like how's it going, Kingdom Comics? How you doing? Yeah, the problem is it is CPAC though. So it's like it's not just one dude at the top. It's pretty much like representative of that entire convention. That to me is like that's the part that's like problematic, where it's like it literally is becoming the brand of conservatives. So I think any conservatives with like any notions of actually representing Christ like are pretty long distant from the like corporate conservative culture at this point, because I think anyone remaining is pretty complicit in some pretty dirty stuff. If they were anything like our founders, they would have revolted by now with guns. Huh. Interesting. I don't know about that. I feel like our founders, like, because I personally think there's like a mythology about our founders, that like there's a lot of like kind of a history when it comes to our founders, because I would think, like for one, like most of our founders weren't Christian, and like I am a Christian saying this. It's just like also I'm a history buff. And so it's like if you look into it, I think the most legit believer of like our founders was probably John Adams. But you have guys like Jefferson who were like not religious really at all. Like, I mean, he had like a thing called the Jeffersonian Bible where he edited out most of the miracles and stuff from Christianity, all the way to, like even like Franklin, like Benjamin Franklin was like, like a womanizer and a humanist, and then he'd use the word God, but he wasn't like really thinking of like the God of the Bible. You just have like a lot of guys with a lot of diverse beliefs, and then a few of them, like Adams, was like pretty legit. Like I think Adams even had like a I think he was a pastor for a little bit, from what I recall. Keep in mind, I'm not an actual historian, but to me it was interesting when looking at the history, like just how few of our founders were there.
We're a Christian nation, darn it.
Huh. Let's see what else. The way public schools put young males on drugs to teach the males are not needed anymore, and put women ahead of men and sexualize kids so early there'd be school admin hanging from posts. I don't know about that either. To me, I would think like, I don't know. I tend to think like, like I think of like Christ, right? And it's like the era that Christ came to earth, right? If you're a believer, which I am, he basically was in like Roman occupied territory, and like he met with like a prostitute at a well, and like was not like hanging that person from a post like you're saying in the chats. But instead actually just talked about the living water that person was seeking after, and basically like kind of treated sinners with love, like even in a very like very secular culture, right? I mean, if you think about like Roman culture at the time, it wasn't like the most moral of cultures, and yet like his reaction to that was not like, hey, you should revolt and take over this society or behave like violently. It was more like it was just like a little bit more balanced and kind of nuanced. But what's interesting is when it came to hypocrites within the church, like half the people at the CPAC convention, who are like creating golden statues of womanizing leaders, and like creating, like willing to overthrow, like try to overthrow a government, like that, like in those senses, like where they're being violent under, and a lot of them being violent and anti-Semitic under the banner of Christ. That to me strikes me as like people that Christ would have actually revolted against. So, because I'm remembering, when Christ came into the temple, and it was like, he was noticing all these people like profiting off of Christianity who were basically like, they were like selling spots where you could like, you could like donate, to the temple, and they were basically like setting up little shops inside the temple, and professing to be believers, but were actually hypocritical and violent. Christ actually went into that temple. This is like, you can look at it. It's, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But it's like, if you look at the one time Christ felt like there was a justification for violence, it was pretty much against the moneylenders at the temple. And it was mainly against hypocrites within the church, using the church for political or monetary gain. So I think that's interesting, because even at a point, there's a point where Christ is about to get taken by like a Roman soldier, right? A whole set of Roman soldiers, after he prayed for a while. And one of his followers like pulls out a sword, and it's just like, yeah, like it's on. We're gonna get violent against these people who are trying to take our Messiah. Even then, he basically tells his followers not to take up arms. But the one time he got violent and got pissed was when it came to hypocritical Christians who were trying to use the banner of trying to use the title of the God that we follow for their own gain. So I mean, so like I said, I feel like Kingdom comics, like, I don't know, like, once again, you're talking about like George Washington and and like that there's people taking kids and giving them to mothers, raising them in ghetto. Yeah, this is, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I mean, I do believe in the idea of it being really important. This doesn't look like Hitchens at all. I do think like it's important to encourage responsible fathers like in our society, but I don't think there's like some vast conspiracy with the school system. I think there's a culture that's corrupt. And I tend to think that's kind of more of the issue, like, than like, and I definitely would say like, I think, like the conduct of like putting like a womanizer in office, like somebody who has no respect for women and like basically has used women throughout his entire life, and also has like persecuted minorities. Putting someone like that as your figurehead kind of loses all moral standing for a conservative. Putting someone like that in office, and I think justifying violence against fathers, like the fathers that died at the Capitol building, and like basically justifying acts of violence to overthrow a democratic process. Like I think that's pretty unchristian, but like then again, I also like once again I think it's important to draw parallels to actually what do you think Rome was like at the time Christ was there? He wasn't causing like violent insurrections against Rome. He was actually causing peaceful examples. But the one thing Christ got violent about, like I said, was like hypocrites in the church that were professing the name of Christ. And also people who were like pointing at like the woman at the well and saying rude things about her as opposed to approaching her in love. And so I just keep that in mind. I have 2 twin boys I have met 3 times. My Vietnam veteran father has never met his 2 grandchildren right here in America. I don't know the context of that, man. Like, so, that's what I'm missing out on here. I'm trying to get a likeness here, and I was realizing I'm missing that nose. That's the problem. Yeah, I don't know the context of that, man. I mean, I do think that's sad if a parent can't see their child. Like, I definitely, personally, am liking, being present in my son's life. I think that's really important. But I also, I don't think that's like a corresponding, like, I just can't really view that as like some sort of vast conspiracy of like a school system or something. That sounds like more like a situational thing that just kind of sucks. I don't know. Let's see here. So anyhow, so let's get into this a little further. So there's a golden calf of Donald Trump at CPAC. There is apparently like the stage of CPAC was created in the shape, and this will tie into my family a little bit, but because my grandpa fought in World War II against Nazis, and he was a pretty rad dude. And what's interesting is the stage shape of CPAC is like the shape of a thing called the Odin rune, or rune, which is an SS trooper icon that a lot of neo-Nazi groups have stated they want to have replace the swastika, right? Like the idea being like they thought that maybe they could get more political clout with nationalism and anti-Semitism by ditching the by ditching the swastika and replacing it with this thing called the Odin rune, which is the shape of the CPAC stage, and it's pretty blatant. So to me, I think that's pretty concerning, where it's like there's literally a giant swath of the attendees and members of the right politically that are engaging and indulging in complete anti-Semitism and white supremacy. And like, to me, that is a massive warning sign, because I think if you're American and you're claiming to be American and yet you back like Nazi propaganda or any sort of anti-Semitic notions, like, you should probably maybe move to a different country, because we sort of fought that in the 40s and won, my grandpa included. So that to me was an interesting, weird thing. But something I think about, where it's like I just don't recognize how that can even be potentially part of what our country is about. It's not. And I think it's weird that it's so mainstream that they can literally make the shape of the stage like a big call out to Nazis or something. So, situation you were talking about, Kingdom Comics, was full custody to women in every state, red or blue, and make fathers fight for custody in courts with no juries. Oh. Got it. Okay, so that actually, like, I am sympathetic to, because I do think it sucks that we're in a scenario where courts often will rule in favor of like a mom getting custody, even when it's a scenario where clearly the father should have custody. And I've definitely seen that with friends. I've had friends go through some court battles and stuff, and that sucks. So depending on the scenario, like, I don't personally know everyone's scenario, but I definitely think parents should get kind of equal standing under the law, like in the sense of like that sort of scenario. Like, we definitely should have I mean, I definitely think that makes a little more sense. So if that's what you mean, but I don't understand how that ties into like the school system. From what you were saying earlier, you were saying like the schools, I don't know, it sounded like a convoluted like kind of statement about like the schools and all these different things kind of working together, almost like a giant conspiracy. And that to me was the part that was a little confusing. Whereas I definitely am empathetic to that is pretty awful if you have kids you aren't able to see because of a legal system kind of ruling against. So that's pretty brutal. Yeah, that can be tough with a scenario like that. Let's see. All right, so let's get into this a little bit. This doesn't look much like that either, and I think I need to have.
Yeah? No.
So I tend to think like that would be not necessarily representative of like how it goes for everyone, but I definitely do think that's one of the areas I would agree. Like I think the court system could get a little more updated where it's not always going to side specifically against fathers in a scenario like that. However, I understand how it kind of got there because there's a lot of very like abusive and terrible men that sort of created conditions where there's a bias in the court and kind of understandably so.
I think it actually stems from men perpetuating the notion that women are there to nurture and men are there to work and not have to do anything with child rearing, and it just from there just sort of
becomes like a sick. Yeah, I agree. So let's see here.
And then later, when all these men want their children, it's kind of like shooting themselves in the foot because they perpetuated the idea that.
So this is interesting. You're saying there's a feminized curriculum tells boys you can't still that they need drugs like Ritalin. Well, so that's different things. I mean, I would think that it's not the school system telling people they need Ritalin. Like that's a different field. So schools can't actually, they actually can't say that. Like, and if you're going to school where they did, like that would be fascinating because that sounds more like something a doctor or a shrink could prescribe. And then teaching that masculinity is bad. I don't know what that means.
Are you talking about toxic masculinity?
Yeah, well, no, so let me explain the toxic masculinity thing because it actually makes sense. So like growing up, I'm a guy who was not like a super jock type dude. And I learned stuff, like kind of classical masculine stuff like like how to use a pocket knife or shoot a gun or like go camping, like that kind of stuff. But like to me, I'm just curious because like where it says schools have feminized the curriculum, that's what you're saying in the chats. Have they? I mean, like to me, I think the thing about masculinity is like one of the most annoying things to me as a man growing up was the idea that somehow womanizing was somehow manly, or that like in quotes like getting laid was like a big deal, or that like men shouldn't talk about their feelings, or that men, I'm trying to think of other toxic things that like go around in male culture and just they're not necessarily like this new thing. Like men having emotions is not that's not unmanly for a man to have emotions, and it's only really in the last like 100 years where we've really started thinking that about men and then had to kind of fight against it. But I mean, if you go back to like like Aristotle, right? Like Aristotle was a deep thinker who talked about emotion and depth and stuff like that. And then this thing about like going to college, like go to college and you'll see this feminized curriculum. I don't know about that. I went to college and I learned how to draw. That's what I learned in college. And I had some pretty like misogynistic professors. Like, so I don't know. Like once again, I think what you're talking about might be kind of a weird bias sort of cartoon read on what the experience is. I don't know. Females are more abusive within family than males. Okay, so maybe in your particular scenario, dude, that might be the case, but just the stats don't bear out on that, dude. Like, and I would tell you, like, living in the AV, having known people who've worked as like sheriffs here, they're not like having to stop by houses to stop female abuse a lot, but they are getting called out to houses where men are abusing their children and their wives. So and just the stats on abuse. I mean, I'm not saying women couldn't participate in that. I'm just saying, like, you're making a claim that's a little tough to back, but I'm sure there's scenarios where it's different. So yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to engage with this dude in the chats, but it's very strange. I mean, that makes sense. Like, I mean, it sounds like you're conflating your own personal scenario where you had kids you couldn't see and they had an abusive mom and the courts sided and awarded her custody. And that sucks. I mean, that sucks. But I wouldn't say that's the norm. And so that's where I'm like, and once again, I think like conflating that with like college, like how does college tie into that? Like, what is this feminizing men thing? I just find it like I'm trying to get your point, man, and there's a whole bunch of different statements that this man is saying. Well, he was saying the schools have feminized the curriculum to tell boys they need drugs. And I don't.
What?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay.
Feminize the curriculum?
Yeah, I don't know.
Which subject? Like all subjects? Like all classes? All curriculum?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's where I need more specifics, because I and like I said with the Ritalin thing, that would have nothing to do with the school. I mean, schools don't.
Well,
like so for instance, just for the dude who's making this claim, like, you know, I have a son who's autistic, right? And he's not on any medication or anything like that. And the services that we used when he was younger to like help him to read and speech, like speech therapy, that kind of stuff, that all was us, like us getting engaged with our child. We just noticed that he was speaking a lot later than most kids.
Offered what they could,
and the school offered assistance to help with that, but it was like us who engaged the process, initiated the process, got him special services, sought out the state to see if the state could kind of work with us to make it happen and stuff like that. And then we also, like, you know, had he needed medication, which he didn't, but had he needed medication, it wouldn't have been the school telling us that. It would have been like social services or a psychiatrist or a doctor. So like, once again, I think you might be kind of conflating like a lot of different things. Like, you're making a lot of different points, and I'd be interested in hearing your own specific points, because it sounds to me like you're making these assertions about the broader world. Like, the world is like this, the government is like this, the schools are like this, and this is why it's all corrupt. And here's my case in point example, and it's a sad personal experience, and that sucks. But like, your own personal experience doesn't equate to everyone's experience, and it definitely doesn't equate to like changing like how things work. Like, I've never heard of a teacher being like, your kid needs Ritalin. Like, I've never heard of that. And I have a lot of teachers in my family, so that just seems pretty weird. I've heard of affirmative action, but affirmative action, man, was necessary, because I don't know if you've ever heard of like slavery, but there was a problem in our country with slavery where, you know, like, we basically enslaved an entire people. And when we freed those people, there was a disparity between people like myself, who were like, this is back then, but it's like people like myself who were born out of slavery to families that had jobs and prospects and property, and then people who've been deprived of that and were just sort of left in a society that segregated. Actually, like the difference is based solely on skin color. So affirmative action was put into place because there was a mass disparity in opportunity for people solely based on their rates, on the color of their skin. So that's why affirmative action was actually put in place originally. So a Christian would not be okay with, oh my goodness, man. Like, I'm trying to engage with you, but this is like a difficult conversation because you're jumping all over the place. Affirmative action now. We're not talking about the forced Ritalin claim that you made earlier that I quickly debunked. Now we're talking about, okay, so a Christian would not be okay with affirmative action making sure women earn just as much as men, LOL, and go to college. What? What? I'm sorry, a Christian wouldn't be okay with affirmative action making sure women earn as much as men? Dude, okay, I work in a workplace where there's women designers and there's men designers, and they do equal work, so they should get equal pay. Like, equal pay for equal work, which is what you're describing as if it's something negative, is not a bad move. Like, that actually makes sense. If I had a daughter, she's working in a workplace, right, doing the same exact job that like you're doing, and you're a guy, and she's doing the same exact thing. Like, she's clocking in, she's doing the work, she's doing the exact same thing and the same amount of work as you, and she's asking for equal pay as you. I think that should be reasonable and backed by law. Like, I don't see, and by the way, that actually wouldn't be called affirmative action. That's just called equal pay for equal work. And that's a pretty reasonable demand. Like, I'm just curious. Do you not think that's so? Like, that someone who's doing the same exact job as efficiently as another person should not be paid equivalently? Like, I'm just curious. Let me know in the chats. And then you're saying women are covered under affirmative action too and deemed minorities. Yeah, but like what you're talking about, the equal pay for equal work, is a little different than affirmative action. And by the way, like, this whole college thing you're bringing up, you understand that like women have traditionally, like for years, like always outranked men in the sense of like college degrees. Like, women actually tend to seek, especially in higher ed, like if you're talking about graduate programs and doctoral degrees, women actually tend to outperform men on that. I don't understand why that would be a bad thing. All right. So hold on. Okay, so I'm a traditional American. I'm not a traditional American. You're for both men and women working instead of the father providing and mother. Okay. I live in a traditional structure, right? Like, I do earn the living for my household, right? Like, my wife does kids' books and contributes, but that's something we agreed on. Like, and like, we just kind of did that out of necessity because I'm an art director and what I make happens to provide for the family. If that were reversed and like my wife could out earn me, and then I'd stay at home and take care of the kid, I would have no issue with that. Like, that's part of, like, women aren't objects, man. Like, they aren't like these like pawns in the game of men. Like, I think that's kind of maybe where we disagree. Like, because it's like, as an individual, as a human being, as a person made in the image of God, my wife has as much value as I do, right? And it's like, if I were to view her as less than, that wouldn't even be backed biblically, man. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So that I don't know what this notion of traditional American is. Like, there's no problem with women working to earn wages. So yeah. And then you're saying I'm going to my Bible. Oh no. Stop acting like you haven't cited the Bible once, saying something that a Christian would never say. I'm not an object either who shouldn't see. Once again, I'm not talking about your personal story with your kids, man. I'm just talking about these wild claims you're bouncing around from. I mean, initially you were telling me there's like a school system trying to force kids to take Ritalin. I kind of disproved that. You were talking about women shouldn't be paid the same in a workplace as men. And I was saying, I even asked you a question, like, do you really think like human beings should, like, for doing the same labor shouldn't be paid the same? And then you switch topics. And now you're talking about this being biblical, but you haven't cited anything biblical. And I would just cite, like, Paul talks about husbands should serve their wives like Christ served the church, and Christ died on a cross. So, like, that's how he served the church. Like, so my job to my wife, like, biblically, is for me to sacrificially love her. And basically that's my job. Like, that there's no if, and, or but about that. It's just a weird one. So I'm trying to pin down, like, I'm enjoying engaging in this conversation with you, but I think we're probably diametrically disagreeing, which is okay. It's just like, stick on one point at least. Like, if you want to talk about like, if you want to be misogynistic, then let's stick to that and we can kind of decode your misogyny. If you want to start bouncing to other stuff, great. If you want to bring about or talk about your personal experience and stuff, like, that I'll be way less judgmental of, because, like, I can't speak to your personal experience. I have not experienced anything you've talked about so far. Like, I've been to college. I didn't experience college professors trying to indoctrinate me to feminize masculinity or whatever. I haven't. Yeah, I just, what you're talking about is not representing the reality I live in. Like, half the kids in the country are alienated from fathers. Women get full custody. Yeah, okay. So once again, that's a totally different issue. The only thing I would say so far that I'd agree with you on, out of everything, because I would say I haven't agreed with anything you've said in the chats. But that's one that I would at least understand with. I don't know if it's 90%, but I do think, like, that does suck that the court systems do tend to side with the mother, like, probably about 90% of the time. And that's been true of, like, from what I've read. And that sucks. Like, but once again, I don't see how, what does any of that have to do with equal pay, or feminizing culture? Like, I just, yeah, I feel like you got to pin down 1 point and just start there. And we can talk about that and dismantle it, or maybe find agreement or find something. But this bouncing from, like, 50 topics to 50 topics, it's called pivoting in debate, right? And, like, pivoting is a really good sign that you don't have ground. Like, if you have to pivot points constantly, it tends to be a sign that you're not really aware of what you're doing. I got to draw, though, so I'm going to draw this. So I would agree that, like, fatherhood should be encouraged, but I think it's stuff like that kind of statement you were making about equal pay for equal work, is toxic masculinity, like what you were talking about. Like it is toxic to think that just because I'm a dude, I deserve to be paid more. Like that is the epitome of like inequality and foolishness. And it's illogical, right? Like if someone can do my job just as well as I can, they should be paid equally. Woman, whatever, like whatever race, whatever gender they are, they should be paid equally. Like that's not a crazy contentious statement. Um, uh, but like, so, but I would agree, like there should be, like with the fatherhood thing, like there should be an encouragement of men being strong fathers and being present and being loving and being in their children's lives, right? And I mean, there's a lot of science behind that as well, where it's like, children raised without fathers like tend to not develop psychologically as well as they could. They tend to be more prone to fear and things like that. And so like having present fathers and encouraging that, and actually maybe rewriting this like idea of masculinity as like the father's like the breadwinner who goes out there, does his breadwinning, and then the mother does all the nurturing. Like that's insane. and that's not a really good positive view of masculinity. Masculinity should include like present fathers who are like there for their kids and like are part of the child rearing process and man up and actually like participate in the child rearing and stuff like that, as opposed to like just kind of pawning that all off on like one partner. So yeah. Okay, and then it's saying it has to do with the Bible saying the man should be the head of the family. Yeah, but like once again, like okay, so let's say you're saying so have you ever worked this is just, and now you're jumping to something else. Let's stick to that one point. You're going a long time and I want to actually have a conversation with you. So let's talk about that. Can we just isolate to this conversation about man as the head of the family? Let's just start there and see where it goes. So in all honesty, sticking to that topic, Kingdom Comics, it's not all the same point. Let's just start with man as the head of the family. Because if we jump to like therefore, instead of just starting with like the first premise, we can't even discuss the second premise because we haven't even talked about the first, right? You're jumping from like premise one to like a conclusion that's like way down the line. And so I'm just literally trying to target like one thing. So have you, in all honesty, have you worked managing or leading people? And it's an honest question. Okay, while you think about that and get back to me on that, like whether you've led people or you've worked in management, I'm going to get some coffee because this is a crazy conversation, but it's enjoyable. So, and maybe we'll have some minds changed or something in it. I do need to also draw a picture of Sam Harris while we're having this weird, wacky conversation. That's kind of fun and interesting. So let me know if you've worked in management. And I still haven't seen a response. So I'm going to go get coffee and then let me know. I know. It's crazy. It's a crazy conversation.
I don't know if it's so much a conversation as just this person was really screwed over by a girl, and he really needs to realize not all women are like that.
Yeah, agreed.
And that really sucks that he was hurt that bad. But
Yeah.
seriously, women are not out to get you.
Okay. So once again, now you're jumping to like affirmative action and the courts, and you're not just answering like a simple question, because I was trying to just start at point one where you were, or point whatever. I was just trying to isolate to like one claim you're making, which is like the Bible leadership thing, where it's the man as the head of the household. Let's stick to that just for a second. Okay. And by the way, I don't know if you could hear it, like my wife's off mic, but she was just saying like it does sound like you had a really terrible experience with somebody and got screwed over, and there were issues with custody of your kids that were probably like incredibly wrong, and that sucks. And all of that, but at the same time, that's not representative of all women and all courts and all people. However, I really do want to stick to that claim you made about like the man as the head of the household in like a thing. And for anyone like watching on like Twitch, you can't see the stream from YouTube, but this is all a conversation with Kingdom Comics on YouTube in the chats. So let's see here.
Oh my gosh, I want this.
I just wanted to know, like, I went and got coffee, and I was curious if you have had an experience with,
Little ceramic gnomes.
let's see here. I'm curious if you've had any experiences managing people, and so now I'm gonna get into why that is. Because basically, like when you're a leader or you're a manager, or even as a parent, right? Like with your kids, one of the worst things you can do, and there's a lot of study. I'm trying to talk. One of the worst things you could do. Oh, here it is. Maybe you answered it.
That's adorable.
So now you're talking about generalizations about women not wanting to get married. Okay, dude, stick to the topic. Like, have you worked?
Have you talked to them?
I know. I'm like, can you just answer one question? Because you're going all over the place on topics. No, he's not a troll. He's just a guy who's participating in a conversation. So I think that you should stick to the question, like, have you ever worked in management? And I want to explain why I'm asking that, because I want to stick to that, like, man is the head of the household kind of thing. So as a parent or a manager, if you like go to a workplace and you have to pull your authority, like from the get-go, like you're like, do this because I'm the manager, you will have your employees get burnt out and they won't actually follow your directives, because you're unfortunately like having to appeal only to your title and your authority. But like real authority doesn't have to appeal to like some title to gain compliance, right? Like this is just basic, like how to win friends and influence people kind of thing. This is basic business. It's basic management. You don't tell people, hey, do this because I'm the boss. That is not a card you pull as a leader. And similarly, like with kids, right? Like if you tell your kids like, hey, you need to do this, often if you just go do this because I'm the dad or because I said so, like you don't actually get compliance. And if you do get compliance, it's like the worst kind of compliance, which is like, I will do this now while I cannot possibly like do anything else, But the second I'm in a position where I can undermine that authority, I'm going to do it. So this shows I've never been a manager. High school failed me, even though I was smart, well-behaved, didn't do drugs, while my sister who did do drugs partied and had okay, once again, I don't want to talk about your sister, dude. I want to talk about you. And you're going on about your sister. Okay, so you just made it really clear you haven't worked in management. So I think like it's a smart idea to consider what being a head of a household or the head of a company or the head of a family is. Like for a good example, like just to bring up like a biblical example, right? Like Jonah, like could have been smited by God, right? Like he could have just been like, you're not doing what I want and I'm God and you need to do what I want. So do what I want. And that's not how God reacts to Jonah. God instead like has this unbelievable patience biblically with Jonah when Jonah is disobeying, where he explains, where he has long conversations, where he is patient and loving to Jonah, even when Jonah's in complete rebellion. And I think like that's something to keep in mind. That's leadership. Like leadership is not going, do this because I'm like, leadership is modeled by God. It's like God rarely goes, do this because I'm God. He usually uses analogies, uses conversations, works with people, gains compliance through rational means. And it's like, that to me is the part that that you're kind of missing from the head of a household. Often, if you're being a leader and you're being an effective leader, you're being a servant leader. And so you actually lead by serving. Like you don't lead by like dictating and demanding. So in the sense of like being a head of a household or something like that, you can do that by serving as opposed to like by being some authoritarian dictator that eventually, by the way, if you do that, you're not going to have a very long marriage, you know? So that's one thing I would say is like by saying the head of the household, that actually puts a lot of responsibility on the male in that scenario, because if you are the head of the household, you like the buck stops with you to serve. The buck stops with you for responsibility, and the buck stops with you when it comes to like answering and sharing and being loving and nurturing to your children as well. So it's like by being the head of the household, that doesn't mean head of the household doesn't mean making all the money. Head of the household doesn't mean like bringing home the bacon and then they take care of the kids. Like that has nothing to do with it. Being the head of a company, anyone who's done a startup or started a business, you'll understand it's like by being the head of the company, it doesn't often mean like just being like the bankrolling person. It means you basically do most of the work, and not like necessarily like all of the paid work, but you're laboring in order to kind of make things happen. So to me, I think that like again, I just think it's a misunderstood. It's just a misunderstanding if you think that means that like women should be homemakers at home while men go out and make all the money. That just doesn't make sense. And also, once again, women making money doesn't have anything to do with any of the problems you're talking about. And that's kind of fascinating to me too, where it's like, you know, having present family, you know, is important on all ends of the spectrum. So I hope that kind of makes sense. But like for me, I think like to think that it's sort of a scenario where like the man is like at home, like dictating everything like some weird dictator. I mean, that's North Korea. That's not good leadership. That's just bad government, you know? So, just saying. Yeah, see, Russ Leach joining in here. You lead by example, by compassion, and inspiring those that look to you to lead. Yes, and Russ would know this because Russ has worked leading creative teams, so he gets it.
Not only that, but you are supposed to.
So now we're jumping to brainwashing by feminism and the courts. Oh my gosh, dude. Okay. Here's a question, Kingdom Comics. Let's okay, so we talked about leadership. I just kind of brought up the fact that like being the head of the house does not necessarily mean anything you were claiming it did. So we took care of that. We knocked that down. Now let's hop to this. Okay. Once again, we're kind of agreed on the courts, man. I told you like that sucks that the courts are kind of biased and tend to be biased towards women. It doesn't change the fact that that bias has a reason, because traditionally, like men have had really bad tendencies to be the most violent in relationships, and honestly to be really inconsistent as providers. And so the court systems have become very biased against men, partially because men kind of tend to be wrong and tend to suck. And it sucks because it's like one of those scenarios where not all men, but enough men to the point where now there's a bias. And it's unfortunate that there's a bias, but we can't take away or abdicate responsibility from like a vast amount of really crappy deadbeat fathers and deadbeat husbands like from the equation.
Well, they perpetuate the idea that women are the nurturers and men are. So when people think of kids, they think nurturing. Oh, send them to the mom.
Hold on. So I want to bring up two things to Kingdom. By the way, Russ, how you doing, man? I'm in this debate with Kingdom Comics, and it's pretty interesting. So there's two weaknesses in debate, right? And Kingdom Comics, I just want you to be aware you're using a lot of them. One is an appeal to tradition, and one is an appeal to authority. And so the thing that I just debunked was your appeal to authority. Like you're like, oh, the Bible, and we just debunked that because your appeal didn't even match the authority you were appealing to. Number two, now you're jumping to the traditional role of men. So you're saying it's tradition, therefore we should do it. And that's an illogical argument. Like there's a lot of traditions that are terrible traditions. I mean, there's countries where it's traditional to circumcise women. Female circumcision is traditional. I could appeal to tradition if I were from that country and be like, well, this is tradition. Does that make it moral? No. An appeal to tradition doesn't mean anything. But okay, so let's take that point. Traditional role of men in America has been the breadwinner. I'm reading Kingdom Comics. So how can that continue if women take half the available jobs and foreigners? What? Oh, no. Oh, no.
You need to widen your group of friends and get your head out of your own butt and stop thinking that you're a victim.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, so the traditional role of men in America has been the breadwinner. So just because, okay, let me target that first. The traditional role doesn't mean anything. Like I said, with the tradition from another country, tradition doesn't justify the action. Like if I live in a society where it's traditional for me to walk up to some random stranger and punch them in the face, and they go, hey, maybe we should change that. Like, it's not nice to just walk up to people and punch them in the face for no reason. And I go, but it's tradition. We've always done that. Like, it doesn't mean anything. So your appeal to tradition, it's foolish. Women taking half the jobs, if a woman can do your job better and she took your job, good for her. Like, welcome to capitalism, man. Like, if you can't do your job as well as someone else and they take your job, cool. Like, that's called the free market, man. That like literally means you just aren't doing a job as well, and you need to maybe gain some other
yourself.
Like get some education, go to college. If you're worried about these women going to college and getting degrees and taking your job, like go to college, like take out a loan, like go to college, take a risk, get the equal education to the woman who now is more educated than you and obviously more talented than you. And if I'm in a hiring position, I'll hire someone who's more talented and more educated 9 times out of 10. Like, why would I'm not going to hire someone just because they're a dude. Like, that would be insane. That wouldn't even make sense on a productivity level. Like, when you're assessing hiring, you're thinking about like what's going to make them be the most productive in the workforce.
Sexist opinions, you're a hazard to the workforce.
Yeah, and then also, once again, if you say any of this when I'm like going to hire somebody, I'm going to worry that you're going to make like an HR nightmare for me. Like, but anyhow, my point is, like, it just doesn't make sense if you're a fan of like the idea of a free market or a capitalist society. Like, if you're hiring, you're always considering like what's the best for the bottom line, like for my company. Like, I have this company, we're here to make a profit. Yeah.
You need to forgive a lot of people and move on.
See, I think
you are a bitter person.
Hold on. So it says American males are.
He's blaming everything on his little childhood problems where he got.
Maya, if you want to be mic'd, that's cool, but we can't hear anything you're saying.
I'm not talking.
Okay.
I'm talking to my mom.
American males are competing with their own women and foreigners. Dude, you know what? Here's the issue with everything you're saying, and then like I've been trying to kind of like engage with you, buddy, but it's just one of those things of like you're making so many weird assumptions. Like, first off, more competition is good for markets. So if you're trying to quash competition, like you're talking about a system that's not a free market. Now, number two, like their own women. What do you mean their own women? Like I'm getting the sense that you have this premise that we own other human beings and that there's some kind of hierarchy that because you're a white male, like you have some kind of dominance or ownership over a class or a different species or a different sex. Like, that to me just strikes me as like really disturbing. And because, like, once again, that's not biblical. Like, we don't own anyone. Like, people are made in the image of God and every human being has equal value. And then what are you talking about? Males from Iran who came here and got everything for free? No one's getting everything for free. What world do you live in where people get things for free? It sounds like to me you're advocating that because you're a male and you're white and you're less talented and less educated, that you should somehow get a job for free. Like, it sounds to me if anyone's advocating for something for free, it's you, dude. And then similarly, now we're jumping all over the place. I mean, you've researched this for years.
Reciting some crap that he heard from some other person that about himself. Yeah, it wasn't me. It was everybody else. It wasn't me. It was everybody else.
You're very talented and have worked in the medical field for 24 years. So then what's your issue, man? You have a job. Who cares? Like, but here's the thing. I'm not saying you're not talented. I'm saying it sounds like you're saying if a white male has less talent than, okay, so here's my question. What is your solution? If I'm an employer and I have a man apply who's less educated, less skilled, less talented, and will be less productive in the workforce, should I hire them just because they're a man? Is that your solution? But if I have an immigrant apply to my job and they're more talented and more skilled and more productive, and they'll be better for my company to have, should I then not hire them just because they're an immigrant? I'm just curious, like, what your solution is proposed. Because it sounds to me like that's what you're saying is like, I should give some sort of special treatment to a dude because they're a dude and they're white. And to me, that specifically sounds like you are devaluing other human beings. And that you're basically saying that like white males should have some sort of privilege. And to me, that just seems really stupid. Like that seems really stupid because to me, as a human being, when I'm hiring, or if I'm in a scenario where I'm like drafting people for school, like I'm trying to get people in to get educated, I'm going to look at like, what's the best talent, period. Like what's the best talent? What's going to be the best productive member of this group or of this society? I'm not really thinking about it on lines of like sex or gender or race. And I think like if you're being blinded by that, I think that's a real issue. And then you're saying affirmative action doesn't care if a woman can perform it. I just don't understand the world you're talking about, man. I don't live in that society. I just don't. And then it's saying it's doing things like making the military lower standards so women can get it. I just don't. I don't know what world. It sounds to me like you have a major problem with women. Yeah, it sounds like you have a major problem with women that stems from a personal experience that you've had with a woman who was unfortunately probably not a very great person to you. And it sounds like you had a bad experience, like losing custody over your kids, and that sucks. And once again, what is mainstream news? Stick to one topic. Because, like, once again, the headship of the house didn't say anything about men being the breadwinners and women being at home being like homemakers. Like, that wasn't anywhere in scripture, and you were saying that's biblical, so we debunked that, so that's good. So that you can't make that claim anymore, so you've lied about that. Let's see, now we've gone on to the topic of let's see. See, now you're jumping to a different topic. So now we've also gone into the topic of the court systems, where I acknowledged and I actually said, like, I do think there is a bias in the courts, and that sucks, and that needs to change when it comes to specifically divorce law. It's probably like the one example where women aren't discriminated against. Like, they actually don't have equal treatment under the, like, they should have equal treatment, but they're still underpaid, undervalued in the workforce, basically like facing all kinds of discrimination outside of that. But you brought up like one thing where it's like that happens to be a case where it's a flipped. The man's curse is to till the soil, not the woman's sow. That's still, once again, not saying a woman can't work. Like, that's absurd. That's an absurd notion. And also, you're kind of forgetting some of the most powerful women in the Bible, you know?
Shush.
All right.
You don't own the couch.
So anyhow, we debunked that, the biblical claim you were making. Then you appealed to tradition, and I explained why an appeal to tradition doesn't mean anything. I mean, traditionally, this country's done some pretty atrocious things. So, like, once again, an appeal to tradition doesn't back anything. And you've made some wild claims about school systems forcing kids to do Ritalin, and that's conspiracy theory. I mean, like, you, as a school system, you can't tell someone a medical thing they need to do. But I will say I've been streaming for about an hour, and it's a good time for a little break. And I will say, like, if you want to have a discussion that goes point by point, let's do that. If you want to just jump around and make a lot of weird kind of talking points that don't connect, then cool. But I'll probably just kind of continue with the stream without engaging. You know what I mean? Okay, you're making all these claims about feminism too. What do you think is feminism? Can you answer that? Just let me know what you think feminism is. Oh, doesn't the Bible have something to say about people making claims about someone not being a Christian? I'm just kind of curious because I think you're being a little heretical, dude. So once again, I think you make a lot of weird claims about like and actually claiming whether you know someone is saved or not is a pretty big misstep. I'm pretty sure there's some passages about who would do that, what sort of person would make that sort of claim. But maybe I'm reading a different book than you. I'm guessing that you are conflating a lot of things with the Bible that aren't actually the Bible. That's what I'm guessing. So I'd like to hear what you think feminism is, since you're making this claim I'm a feminist. And also claiming I'm not a Christian.
You're a foreigner.
Well, you just told me I'm not a Christian too, which is interesting because there's so many verses that say you don't make that claim about other believers. But I don't know.
No, it's just some guy that's talking to Josh in the chat room, but he's obviously racist and sexist.
Well, and he's like, if you like the way America is going now, you win. It's funny because once again, he's making these claims of me being a feminist. I was like, hey, what do you think a feminist is? No response. He makes a claim about me being a Christian, and I mentioned not being a Christian.
Feminism is a dirty word, though.
Yeah. And also you made a claim about me not being a Christian, and I actually pointed out the fact that there's biblical passages that actually talk about that literally being one of the most evil.
Because you don't agree with him.
Wait a second. One of the most evil things you can do is to say whether someone's saved or not, because it's not your place as a human being. There's a lot of passages about that in the Bible that he claims I don't believe, but I don't know if he's read. Okay, so his definition of feminism. Okay, I can't totally mute this guy because it's too funny.
Dude, what did this person do to you that made him so scared?
He just has a lot of pain, and I think he somehow thinks that the Bible's like a misogynistic book. I think he's forgetting about figures like Ruth and stuff in the Bible that are like strong women. Or Mary. I don't know. I think he's just...
Is that Lennox?
No, these are the new atheists. This is before I get into
Lennox doesn't ever have a
how I
beard,
was saved. I think I'm just reading Kingdom Comics. I think feminism generalizes men and has resulted in men like me not being able to see their own kids. Okay. That's saying nothing about what you think feminism is, though. What do you think feminism is? Like, what is feminism? Like, you're saying what it does, but could you tell me what it is?
Generalizes men. You are generalizing everybody.
I know. I was like, you're talking about generalities. I've read a lot of generalities about these strange immigrants and
Most
all
women
this.
I know barely see their own kids, and the masculinist country hates. Not me hating women.
Hold I got
I have
it.
to leave.
You're pissing my wife off, dude. It's not just me. Most men I know barely see their own kids, and it's men and masculinity this country hates, not me hating women. I didn't say you hate women. Could you just explain real quickly? Again, you haven't answered my question. What is feminism? You're making all these claims about feminism. What do you envision is feminism? Not what does it do, but what is it? Like, if I were to say I'm a feminist, what do you think I mean by that? What do you think the word feminism means? Because I don't think you even know what you're claiming. And you're saying I'm talking about statistics and facts. Okay, let's talk statistics and facts. What do you think feminism is? Define feminism. If you were talking to a feminist, what do you think they would tell you feminism is?
Don't bother with this guy.
I'm enjoying the discussion.
It's not a discussion. This guy doesn't answer any questions. He just is trying to force down your throat some sort of personal opinion.
I know, but I have to work.
Personal experiences and not actually statistics or facts because he's freaking crazy.
Well, I know, but I have to work, and I'm working on art, and I like.
He sounds crazy.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we can break through to this guy. It bums me out because this person, like Kingdom Comics, let me explain to you why I'm still engaging with you and why it kind of bums me out having this discussion. Because I am a Christian, and you don't get to dictate whether I'm a Christian or not. And I really would encourage you to actually read the book you claim to believe if you claim to be a Christian, because you telling me I'm not a Christian is a highly unchristian thing to do, particularly if the reasoning for you believing that is me talking about people having equal value as people made in the image of God. Like, if you're debating that, like, you have a really warped perspective on Christianity. Second, like, you going around claiming to be a Christian while, like, you know, it sounds like you have hatred for women and for immigrants. Like, that doesn't represent Christ. That doesn't represent Christ's love at all. I mean, Christ, like, literally loved immigrants to the point where he saved a thief that was an immigrant on a cross next to him while he was dying. Christ loved immigrants to where he went outside of places that were, you know, once again, now you're saying Christ is not a feminist. Who said you still haven't defined feminist? So I can't even have a discussion with you because of the fact that you literally don't even know what you're claiming. Like, would you like to tell me what you think feminist is? What is the definition of feminist? You're using words that you don't even understand the meaning of. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because here's the thing. My definition of feminist would be, do I think that women should be... You have defined feminine. Oh my gosh. No, you haven't. And here's the thing. Do you think women... I just want to know your opinion. Do you think women should be paid equal to men for equal work?
No.
Like, if you have a daughter and she wants to save up, if you have a daughter, right, and she wants to save up to go to on a trip for Europe or something, and so she takes a summer job, do you think that when she takes that summer job to save up, she should be paid less than men?
Yes.
Okay. You think feminism is an agenda the controlling classes and families are using? Once again, you don't understand what feminism is. That's the main problem. You think feminism is something it's not. Well, that's cool, but it's not. That's not what feminism is. So, like, once again, I think of feminism as something as simple as this. Women and men are equal. Like, they are equal in value because they're made in the image of God. If that to you sounds like rank feminism, then Christ was a feminist. And so you might want to look for a different belief system. Oh my gosh. You think women should be trained? What, are they dogs? They should be trained for marriage and families, not to worry about their financial futures?
He's just riling you up now, Josh.
Oh, it's funny. No, he's not riling.
This guy's just riling you up. He's just saying this crap to get you all mad. He's a troll.
I don't know. He's got a comic. He's a comic, a Christian cartoonist.
No, he's not.
What a shame. What a shame that you call yourself a Christian, dude. I mean, I can't speak to whether you're saved or not, but what a shame. You don't think people are equal under the image of God? You're not a Christian.
Gosh, you can't say that.
Well, no, I can say if you don't think that people are equal under like because they're made in the image of God, that's not a Christian viewpoint. Hey, guess what will work?
He's just an angry individual, dude.
All right. So that was fun. Sorry, dude. Sorry, dudes. That was a lot of fun. I just blocked Kingdom Comics because he went through all these crazy things. And it turns out the dude's kind of a crazy sexist who likes to say who is and isn't saved. I try to engage him, but I just couldn't. So you're blocked, buddy. Good luck to you. And now I'm going to take a break for like about a minute. And I did draw my new atheists during this lovely conversation, and we will see. It's interesting that viewpoints like that still exist. Like, that to me is the sad part.
I wonder why he's not married anymore.
Yeah. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. Hopefully that was interesting for anybody who might chime in. It's a good example of like the kind of thing I have to deal with as a Christian who's not like extremely in the pocket of like the right wing or like a misogynist. Like, that's unfortunately a big window into like the world we have to navigate. All right. So there we go. All right. I'll be right back. Whew. Oh.
He's taking out his anger on the whole world, thinking that everybody was wonderful to him.
Maybe he's just joking.
Yeah, could be just some jerk that's just trying to make people mad. Jeez, what a jerk.
That kind of person in this old Christian?
Yeah, anti-immigrant, anti-woman, getting jobs, like,
It's a Trump.
yeah. The thing is, it's like, you are an immigrant, okay? The people who are here before you are called Native Americans. You are an immigrant.
Mm-hmm. You were an immigrant to Christ too, right? Because like, yeah.
If you're not Jewish, like, the fact that you can say that you're saved is a testament that Christ is open to everyone. He saved women and men equally. He treated them equally.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. I
All right.
This work is good. Whatever. It's a waste of energy. Mom, do you still have enough shampoo and conditioner?
Oh wow. Okay. Now he's got a different username.
See, he's a troll.
This is fascinating.
No, Josh, he's a troll. Just block him.
Oh, and he said, I was never married. The woman ran off with my kids, never told me she had them. I didn't find out she had them until she lost custody for
your
abuse.
sob story anymore. You are a troll.
Sorry, I'm blocking you again. once again, it's like I'm okay with engaging in conversation. It's just like it's hard to
Sitting
do.
there putting up his soft shoulder and he's saying, "Woe is me that I got screwed over by somebody." Well, welcome to the world, dude. People screw each other over, but you don't get to sit there and act like some petty victim and then turn around and be completely just belligerent and rude to people.
He got well, congrats, Kingdom Comics or MGT
I wonder
Toe
why
Misfit.
that woman ran from you.
So anyhow, Russ, how are you doing, man? You still here? Did you get chased off from all the madness?
I don't know.
So, I mean, wow, this guy is trolling hard. He's like kind of back as MG Tao Rogue.
See, anyone who has that many usernames just to keep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think the fact that you have like multiple user accounts, like, it is just a sign that you probably troll pretty frequently, dude. Here, I'll show it though. Anyhow, so Russ, I'm curious how you're doing, man. I hope Russ is still there. The other issue, dude, is like it's just really boring content at this point because you won't engage in discussions. So, like, I'm all for like somebody in good faith trying to have a conversation, even if they fully disagree with me. But you know, you've gone far past good faith. Oh boy, good times. All right, so let's get into drawing. All right, so the next section of this is going to be about that was interesting though. I hope that was entertaining for people watching. Because like the nice thing about that kind of thing, like heated discussions, is it definitely makes for good content. So hopefully that kept people entertained and interested. I also have to say, like, it's probably a good sign that I'm getting occasionally trolled on my channel, because that's pretty much like a sign that, you know, people are starting to get people following them, you know. But yeah, it's hard to have a discussion. Like, to me, I think the issue is like if you're a human being, you need to have value and respect for other human beings. Like, you know, at the end of the day. All right. So here we go. I loved arguing to prove. Okay. Here we go. And now we're going to have this next section. Okay, so this is going to say, which is interesting, considering. So, I loved. It's interesting too, because that is exactly the type of to prove. That's exactly like the type of Christian that kind of was sort of one of the main reasons I avoided and never looked into Christianity for a very long time. Was that sort of person who's like sort of conflating the belief system with misogyny and like anti-immigration. Christian beliefs were. Okay. And this one is going to be you okay, huh?
Yeah.
All right. But I do love what Russ said here about leading by example, by compassion, and inspiring those that look to you to lead. All right. So here we go. Let's see. Okay, so I need to figure out what this next section is going to be. I think I like the idea of this actually being less tall. So I'm going to probably decrease the height of these figures and make it happen. All right, so we're getting into this. It's just going to be interesting figuring out how to show this because a lot of this next section is going to be like infographic style stuff. And then we'll see where it goes from there. Okay. Give me 2 seconds. We're at like 2 hours. So I do need that like little break and then we'll get into it. What is this going to be? Oh, cool. Okay. I'm actually really excited. The next section should be pretty fun for this page and then we'll get it going. All right. So what was kind of unfortunate about that scenario is it just doesn't reflect what I think we should be reflecting to the world. Like, I kind of think it's one of those things of like my wife is a better artist than I am, and I have no qualms about saying it. Like, she's better at drawing. She's actually she's a lot smarter than me. And if we were after the same job and she got the job, I'd probably be like, yeah, that makes sense. She's actually more talented than me at certain things, you know? I'm better than her at a couple things, but I don't think she'd have issues admitting that just because I'm a dude. You know what I mean? I think it's like one of those things of like, you kind of have to assess people for who they are and how they behave,
Nothing to do with your sex.
and like kind of put on the blinders when it comes to like, like blocking their value just because of like the color of their skin or the sex they are. Like, it's just kind of weird. And we also have to really work like to like not front load all of our experiences to prejudge like everyone we come across or like the world we come across just because of a specific scenario we experienced. I mean, I definitely saw this with, like I talk pretty heavily in this comic about being jumped in Long Beach for the color of my skin as like part of an initiation. And it's like, I actually think the wrong step in that would be to suddenly assume that that's like everyone, that somehow has to do with everyone's version or view of the world. Like it was literally a couple bad actors doing a thing, and it doesn't reflect an entire culture or group of people. I think like just doing that to anyone because you had a bad experience. A good case in point, like I would say the same for like somebody who had a bad experience with men, just making like blind assertions about all men based on those bad experiences with one man does not reflect across every single person that's a man. It's the same issue across the board, where it's like, I think part of the problem that guy was talking about in the court system that got him all riled up, partially from his conduct in the chats. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know you personally, but I'm like, if you behave that way in the courtroom, like, no wonder. But if that's a weird scenario and it's like your personal experience and you're a good dude, like that you can't bring that as a judgment against every single human being that you come across. You have to kind of view people with a blank slate. So that to me is kind of the bummer of that whole scenario. It's like also just these wild assumptions, like that actually puts a light onto why there's such a political divide, because I think that if you're willing to kind of like dehumanize an entire group of people because of like some bad experience you had or something you read in the news, like it's a light into why you'd be willing to embrace like wild nationalism or like an insurrection against the country you claim to love. I mean, that to me, that it makes sense. It's just kind of a bummer because like once again, I think it's just like trying to kind of play victim and sort of try to blame like bad scenarios in your life on like an entire class or group of people, which is pretty common but unfortunate. I will literally spend my life trying to fight that kind of thought. And I frankly think that's one of, like, as a Christian, I think that's like one of the main things like Christ spent his lifetime trying to fight, was like this idea of like prejudging people for like where they're born. I mean, there's a whole like parable about the Good Samaritan that talks about that, where it's like just because someone was a Samaritan, people were willing to let them just be beaten and die without stopping to kind of have some humanity and some compassion for the person. And I really do think humanity and compassion is huge. But I will tell you, if I had a daughter and she was dating some dude who like thought like that person in the chats thought, I would want her far away. Because it's like, I definitely think if you're like a human being, like you have the right, as like, and I think this is a very like American idea, right? To pursue happiness, right? Like you have, you have the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And that's innately endowed in people. And if you don't believe in that, if you don't think that all people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then, I would make the claim you're probably not an American. Like, yeah, because that's like a foundational belief. So, yeah, rambling, but just mentioning that. All right, so here we go. Let's get into this. I will say that I face that quite a lot, like that sort of thing, being in this weird little route where I'm not like quite making stuff that fits with like within like the Christian industrial complex, where it's like I'm not necessarily making art that is preaching to evangelicals. I'm making art that is art, and then I happen to be a Christian, and I'm talking about my experience and belief in faith. And so I end up in this weird position where it's like politically I'm very opposed to like what the majority of art published in that is about, and yet at the same time I'm also a believer. So it's like a very strange kind of scenario where I'm like stuck between a rock and a hard place, where I don't necessarily have I'm like a man without a country in that sense. Because just because I believe in God does not mean I'm going to like suddenly be on board with like, rampant misogyny or sexism. Like it's just, I can't abide that. Like, and I think it's unfortunate that sort of thinking is like dominated, a lot of like Christian media, and just goes unquestioned. Like even in churches, like that sort of mindset and thinking where people are actually undervaluing other human beings. I just think that's unfortunate. Okay. Now I gotta focus on my art. But hopefully it made for interesting content. Okay, I loved arguing how to prove how foolish Christian beliefs were. So what's funny is I am writing about like back when I was a hardcore atheist, and this is like sort of some of the things I used to enjoy. I even a favorite
You should get out and wash your hands.
arguments. He's still in there.
You get bookmarks.
To take down Christians with.
You just you're sitting.
Is that the toilet still?
Yeah, I got go in there. Okay, all right. For the washing.
The stove's on. Yes? Josh, can you help him, please? I know you're recording, but I'm cooking.
I can do that.
Okay, never mind. Josh,
Got it.
It's all right. A lot of fun in the daytime, doing a lot of stuff. Okay, so this is going to be. Let's see, favorite icon. It's freezing. Okay. Okay. Favorite icon. Here we go. Trying to think of what I can do iconographically to make this. Let's see, favorite.
What do you say?
Block the sound.
Oh, you know why? It's the smoke.
Yeah.
It's definitely, that's why I opened the door, because it was getting smoky in here.
All right.
Sorry,
Put it
Josh.
up
It's-
for a little while.
Okay, it's freezing though.
We'll put a jacket on.
All right.
I'm sorry, it's just a little while because it's getting smoky.
It's okay. I'm just trying to work and stream, and
Well, it's a Sunday. People are awake and trying to do things like make breakfast. I'm sorry.
you're fine. Christians with. Hi, Benji.
Hi.
How's it going, dude?
Hey guys.
Hi. That's enough.
I literally just washed my hand. And when I washed my hand, this time I used seven pumps of soap.
I'm opposed to.
Two pumps. Sorry. Sorry. Sometimes I just like to use
Way
extra.
too much soap.
Sorry, Mom. Sometimes I
Thank
just
you.
like to use extra. I'm sorry, Mom. I just really like to use extra sometimes.
Okay, just don't waste it. Okay? So, free, baby.
Okay, so we're doing this. Thinking like if I just do like a star, but with no, a star doesn't make any sense. Oh, I've got it. Boxing glove.
Sorry, it's cold, you guys. A little bit longer in the house will get out. You can close it. I'll just open the kitchen door. That's it, Mom.
I think if this is a boxing glove, that might work,
Okay, it might be a little less cold.
but I need to block it out so that it fits in the section. Let's see. So there we go. I can definitely, it's funny because like my one topic that I was going to bring up was the golden statue to Donald Trump, which reminds me of just a lot of biblical texts that are about kind of idolization and sort of glorification of kings. In fact, there's entire like chapters of the Old Testament that talk about that as being kind of problematic. And I was bringing that up, and it was interesting being visited by someone who I think might be all about that sort of thing. And what was kind of revealed through our conversations was like some rampant, misogynistic, anti-immigrant, bordering on just almost like fascist viewpoints and jumping all over the place, like things, viewpoints that weren't consistent and sort of were making scattershot justifications for like having bad viewpoints of other human beings, justified by some bad personal experiences. And I guess maybe that was like a window into like what that contingent that's comfortable with, like a golden statue of like a man who, has shown throughout like the last like 4 years in our country, like a complete misogyny and disrespect for women, and like kind of a hatred for immigrants and stuff like that. Like it actually at least makes that more of a reality. I think this would be better if it was one glove. I was going to do a set of gloves. This will be better as one. I might have to go in a second just to like do breakfast, and then I might come back with a different stream. I was hoping to get this page done, but I've only gotten about a third through it, and I need to do 3 of these today in order to be caught up, like 3 pages. So maybe if this shrinks down a little bit. And I have like a power blast. And I think we're all going to be doing breakfast, so I'll probably be back in a little bit with a new stream. But thanks to anyone who watched this in retrospect, and it was an interesting one. Definitely engaging the trolls. It has been an interesting thing. Getting to the point where we're having some trolls has been an interesting thing. All right, so that's as far as I've gotten. And I will probably be coming back on stream 31 after breakfast. So, all right. See you guys then. Bye.